Welcome to Two Beans in a Pod. We dive deep into the sources you provide, pulling out the most important bits of knowledge and insight. Today, we're tackling something that's really sparked a lot of debate, a lot of curiosity lately. Unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs, and specifically some, well, pretty bombshell claims surrounding them. Our goal here is to sort through some recent revelations, especially from one key testimony, to help you figure out what might be going on and why it's making such waves.
That's right. We've got some really interesting material today. Direct quotes from a recent UFO hearing, some news reports, accounts of a pretty respected physicist's work. And the main thing, really, the thread running through it all isn't just, do these things exist? It's more about, well, how much information has been kept from the public and, why? That's the big question hanging over everything.
Okay, yeah, let's unpack that. At the center of this is Dr. Eric Davis. Now, he's a physicist, highly respected, been looking into UAP stuff since the 90s, even worked on, well, top-secret Pentagon projects. And his recent statements, they're really eye-opening.
They really are. According to what we've seen, Dr. Davis stated at this hearing on Capitol Hill that there are, get this, 4 distinct types of aliens or non-human entities operating these crafts.
Yeah.
Now, it's mentioned he might have seen them or maybe heard about them secondhand, but through credible channels. And it's important to get this bit right. Initially, it sounded like he was officially under oath, but Congressman Burleson later clarified it wasn't technically an under oath hearing. Still,
Yeah, Burleson did say he'd heard similar things privately.
Exactly. That's the kicker. Burleson said he had heard very similar stuff about these categories of beings and classified briefings from other insiders. So there's some corroboration there, even outside that specific hearing setting.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting for me. The 4 types Dr. Davis apparently named: Greys, Nordics, Insectoids, and Reptilians. I mean, you hear these terms in sci-fi, right? But from a physicist with his background talking to Congress, that's different.
It is. And what's fascinating, maybe even a bit disturbing, is how consistently these specific descriptions pop up from credible sources, even skeptical ones like Burleson, within these secure government briefings. Burleson, he's on the House Oversight Committee, the UAP caucus. He confirmed hearing about these 4 types from others in private. Now, he did say he's still skeptical, hasn't seen personal proof, called them common tropes in the UAP world. But the point isn't just if they're real, it's that these specific tropes are being discussed at the highest levels. What does that mean? Either it's real or it's some kind of incredibly complex, long-running disinformation campaign. Either way, it's huge.
Okay, so if these are the categories being discussed, what do they supposedly look like, according to the sources?
Well, the descriptions are pretty much what you might expect if you followed UAP lore. But hearing them in this context is something else. So grays, small humanoids, smooth gray skin, those big black almond eyes. No real nose or ears mentioned usually. Dr. Davis specifically linked them to the Corona crash in Mexico. He said that's often mislabeled as Roswell, but it's a different event apparently.
Right, the classic alien look. What about the others?
Nordics, described as basically human size, maybe 5-6 feet tall, often fair features. Then insectoids, just like it sounds, insect-like features, multiple limbs sometimes, maybe an exoskeleton, mandibles, antenna even.
Yeah.
Dr. Davis put them around human height too. And finally, reptilians. This one's probably the most controversial. Shape-shifting reptilian aliens. David Icke popularized that idea, but interestingly, similar half-human, half-serpent figures show up in really old myths from some South and Southeast Asia. So the idea itself isn't brand new. Davis also mentioned them being roughly human height. The fact these descriptions, some sounding pretty wild, are part of these high-level chats is really the story here.
Given how extraordinary that all sounds, and the fact that people like Burleson are hearing it in classified settings, it really shifts the focus to why keep it secret. Which brings us right to that theme you mentioned. Government secrecy, maybe even a disinformation campaign. The sources definitely point that way.
Yeah, there was a really interesting example, almost meta. YouTube apparently put a disclaimer under the video of the hearing itself. It flagged the reptilian humanoids part as mythology or conspiracy theory. This is despite, Dr. Davis being a respected physicist with Pentagon and CIA connections saying it. Congressman Burleson said he was kind of okay with the disclaimer, but he really stressed Davis's credibility. It highlights that tension perfectly.
It really does. And Burleson's reaction to Davis's claims overall was quite telling, wasn't it? He basically said, look, if this is true, it's shocking. But then he added, if it's not true, that's also shocking. And he asked, why would former military, former intelligence people be pushing this same narrative? Essentially, why are we letting our government lie to us and paying for it? That's a pretty stark question from a member of Congress.
It cuts right to the heart of it. And it ties into what historian Richard Dolan has talked about, past efforts to make anyone discussing UFOs seem nutty. Dr. Davis described these UAP programs as even more sensitive and more well-hidden than the Manhattan Project. I mean, think about that comparison. And he says they're deliberately kept away from Congress. How? Through something called Presidential Emergency Action Directives, or PEDs.
PEDs, what are those exactly?
They're basically powerful executive orders, started back under Eisenhower during the Cold War. They're classified, and crucially, they aren't subject to Freedom of Information Act requests. FOIA doesn't touch them. So it creates this kind of legal black hole for extreme secrecy.
So a system meant for nuclear war scenarios being used for UAPs, how does that work practically?
Apparently, yes. The idea is these PAs give legal cover for retrieving and studying UAP tech, all done within private industry, away from public or congressional eyes. The mechanism described is, well, it's clever. DoD and CIA offices supposedly set up shell companies, dummy corporations. These companies then get sole source contracts, no bidding, no specific line item in the budget for alien tech. The money flows to specific defense contractors for, quote, internal research and development. So on paper, it just looks like private R&D, completely bypasses normal oversight. And Davis also pointed out there's a real lack of physicists involved in these programs, which he thinks holds back actually understanding how these things work.
That's an incredible structure of secrecy. If true, it suggests the stakes are perceived as astronomically high. But, okay, outside these hidden programs, are military people seeing things? Are there reports that just vanish?
Oh, absolutely. The sources mention plenty of that. There's a compelling account from Admiral Tim Gaudette. He talked about an SH-60 Seahawk helicopter crew chief who recorded a metallic sphere on video using forward-looking infrared over the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower back in 2021. A clear metallic sphere. And it wasn't just a one-off. F-18 pilots off the Eisenhower and the USS Gerald R. Ford were apparently encountering UAPs frequently. The Navy reportedly has a whole trove of video evidence and data. They're even archiving sightings on secret laptops in the ready rooms, sometimes under weird names like range fowlers. Almost dismissive,
So the data exists, pilots are seeing things. Why isn't more of this getting out to scientists, to the public?
Well, Chris Mellon, who used to be in government, points to deliberate overclassification, systemic suppression. Remember those 3 videos released in 2017? Gimbal, FLIR, Go Fast, big deal at the time. But later, apparently, a classification guide was created that basically slapped classified on anything having to do with UAP. It's a bureaucratic wall. It stops potentially valuable data getting out, even if, as Mellon argues, sharing it could actually help national security by raising awareness or providing data for AI analysis.
And it gets worse, right? Mellon also talked about the big sensor system.
Yeah, this is pretty mind-blowing. He points out these incredibly expensive, sophisticated systems, SPARS radar, the GEODs as telescopes, the SBR satellites. These things are designed to track everything in our skies and near space, billions of dollars worth of sensors. And yet they officially report 0 UAP incidents to AARO. That's the office Congress set up specifically to study UAPs.
0 from those systems, while pilots are filing reports.
Exactly. 0 reported to AARO. Meanwhile, AARO has gotten something like 1,800 reports from military personnel in recent years, some just taken on iPhones. Mellon's take is that the data from those big systems must exist, but it's classified at such a high level and so compartmentalized that it's just not being shared, not even with the office meant to analyze it. It shows an incredible level of internal secrecy.
Okay, this is going beyond just satisfying curiosity. There are real national security implications here, aren't there? What are the stakes?
Admiral Gaudette puts it pretty bluntly. He says UAP and non-human intelligence very well could be an existential threat. That's strong language. And this deep compartmentalization, as Kirk McConnell and Chris Mellon point out, it means Congress can't effectively oversee these programs. Nobody really knows how they're run, how much they cost, or what they're actually achieving. It's a huge blind spot.
It's that classic government dilemma, isn't it? If you do have something revolutionary, maybe recovered tech, blue force technologies, they call it, how do you protect it? While also being honest with your own citizens about strange things flying around that you can't identify. Where's that line?
It's a tough line to walk, for sure. And the sources hint at a really frightening scenario driving some of this secrecy. Weaponization. The fear that some advanced energy source, maybe derived from this tech, could fall into the wrong hands. One source used the example of a North Korean dictator. And then there's the competition aspect. Mike Gold highlighted how China is apparently pursuing UAP research full bore. 247 coordinated, he said. Their public presentations even mention things like space-time metric engineering and gravitational control, stuff that sounds like science fiction. Contrast that with the US approach, which seems by these accounts to be separated, compartmentalized. The worry is we could fall seriously behind.
This is clearly a critical time for people to be aware of what's being discussed. And if you, listening right now, are finding this deep dive as fascinating as we are, please do hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Your support really does help us keep digging into these important topics and bringing the information straight to you. So wrapping things up a bit, the testimony from Dr. Eric Davis, especially when you add the context from people like Congressman Burleson and defense experts, it paints a really complex picture, a phenomenon that seems to demand serious attention, shrouded in decades of government secrecy. Whether that secrecy is to protect legitimate secrets or hide uncomfortable truths, it's created this massive gap in our understanding.
Yeah, and the fundamental questions just hang there, don't they? If these claims about retrieved tech and different entities are true, why the intense, decades-long cover-up? But if it's not true, if it's disinformation, why are credible, high-level people pushing this narrative? Often, as sources mentioned, at great personal cost. People who've apparently lost everything for coming forward. It forces you to ask, what happens if Congress doesn't get to the bottom of this? What are the consequences of inaction?
It really underscores that we, the public, have a part to play here in pushing for more transparency, because ultimately, this isn't just about maybe finding out if aliens are real or not. It's about government accountability. It's about potential scientific breakthroughs, and maybe even about understanding our own place in the universe a bit better. It's about reality itself.
Thank you for listening to Two Beans in a Pod. If you are interested in the book, please order from the link below.